So the long anticipated long bill. Long bill is the primary budget document that goes through the sausage making for the rest of the session. So the long bill now begins to be vetted. It starts in the House and Senate floors, and then it goes to the caucus committee where they do a little bit more, and then it comes back to the original House of origin, whether it's the House or the Senate. It's going to be very complicated this year simply because there's just so much money. And the last legislative update we had, anytime you are throwing a bunch of money into a system that doesn't have the structure in place to absorb, it's fraught with peril. So my guess is we're going to see a lot of blue ribbon panels. The last couple of bills that are introduced have really high fiscal notes. Indications are that from Ledge Council, they have about a 12% cushion, knowing the additional bills that will be introduced to the end of the session so that they're not having to recoup and reevaluate. This year, it's 25%. So that what that means for any legislative or lobbyist, if you will, big stakes. Big winners and big winners and big losers for any of these swings. The collective bargaining, again, I'm not going to go through that a lot. Broomfield's always had the ability to do it. Still with county governments. Yes, Jean.
I was on the CCAT all-member meeting yesterday. Yeah. And Devin's on vacation in that. And so they were talking about the fact that all the counties were going to be asked for their fiscal impact for that bill, just as a matter of everybody needs to be asking for the input for the appropriate, for the fiscal note on the bill.
Sure.
So that's just, I know, I understood that you said it didn't impact us, but I just thought I'd throw that in there in case you didn't know that request was coming.
Yeah, so Jenny Pigeonneau is a longtime CCI lobbyist, and actually a Broomfield resident. Eric Davidson is as well. So when I was down at Teen Council with the kids, anytime that, so the interesting piece is the intent of the fiscal impact is to get to know, right? So anybody that wants to get to yes generally doesn't ask how much it's going to cost, because they know that's going to be the uphill battle piece. So it will be, let's just put it this way, for those counties that do not have it in place right now, I don't even know how you anticipate what the fiscal note would be. I don't even know the methodology for calculation to determine that, other than just saying it will be seismic. And again, it's the, if you have a fundamental structure in place where you have committed to a compensation philosophy, if you have direction in place from a fundamental structural perspective of salary surveys, if you're analyzing the budget ongoing, I had a really interesting conversation, just a quick side note, with Boulder County and City of Boulder leadership yesterday on their continuing struggles regarding staffing. And part of, so Boulder County, they have 5 different unions that they have to manage outside of fire and police. It makes for, it again, from a structural shift, from a pendulum swing, it behooves you to do what you need to do for your folks on the front end. It will be financially catastrophic for some of these counties that are already, not taking, they didn't debruce. I think of Jefferson County. It'll decimate them.
There was really interesting conversation at the CCAT meeting yesterday on it.
So just in a nutshell, Jean, what was it?
I mean, like that, Jefferson County was worried. I mean, they were speaking out. Boulder County was worried. They were talking the pros and cons of making all of, adding an amendment to the legislation so that if there was collective bargaining, the whole city's employees had to be under one union. And then, Adams County was saying, no, that's not practical. They're not the same kind of workers. And it was a full conversation.
Yeah. So, again, so I sit on the board of CCCMA, which is the City County Managers Association. If fundamentally you're not doing what your highest cost resource is, which is your human resource, and somebody has to come in to fix that, this is what you're going to get, right? Again, which is even if you do the salary surveys, so part of the conversation that we've been leading on CCCMA is you have to do it, right? You at least coming with what the new survey and the market looks like, especially now. You have to come and then you determine financially whether you can do it or not. Right? You have to take that first step to be able to say, at least now we know what the cost is. How are we going to pay for it? And if we're not, then you have that conversation transparently. But these counties that just say, listen, we can't even enter into that realm right now. This will continue to come back and back and back. My guess is counties will be out and higher ed will be in. And then higher ed will say, we've capped tuition the best we can. CU is one of them, right? The two regents are now coming out, CU, and saying, if this comes through on higher ed, we guarantee you that the pass-through will be to the students. And then you do the non-resident, resident kind of mix. So it's fraught with peril, right? The intent is solid, but there are ways around it that you don't have to be in response mode. So speaking of employers, 4 new bills regarding, two and two new ones, but talking about the prohibiting the employers from being fired or refusing to hire an employee based on their use of marijuana. Big conversations. Really, again, it's fascinating that Colorado has legalized it. Yet the employers say, yeah, you legalize it all day long, but we want to be able to hire and fire based on drug tests, period. Now, the ripple effect is so many people are smoking pot, you can't find the workforce. So a lot of municipalities and counties are saying, we're fundamentally, we won't have anybody that works for us. So then you drill down further. Anybody that drives a vehicle, anybody that has anything to do with finance. But for the general employees, you're going to see this more and more. And so although it was killed this session, it'll continue to come back. It's only a matter of time before it passes. Paid family medical. This is another, want to use some of the one-time dollars. So it's about a $60 million hit for 6 months. They, in response to that, decreased the employer premium. So again, if you're under 50 employees, it's already tough to operate a family business. So it's 100 or more, but even that threshold, again, it's in perilous times, right? Because inflation is something that we haven't faced for 40 years, right? So a lot of these employers, they weren't around for the last time that we had any kind of sense of inflation. So it's expensive, big deal if you can afford it. Yeah, let's see. Bipartisan bill creating a work-based learning incentive program. Carolyn, does everybody have this sheet?
Sorry, I'm also getting used to Zoom versus Google Meets. I think everybody on the call should have that sheet.
Okay, thank you.
Lori, I emailed it to you if you have your computer right there. I can also ask Carla to print you one if you'd like.
Oh, no, I have one.
Hi, Lori.
Yeah, Lori has one.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
They've just sent it to you.
I just want to make sure that was in the, okay, let's see, public safety. I'm sure everybody's heard about fentanyl. Again, opponents saying, it doesn't go far enough. Still 4 ounces or under possession continues to be a misdemeanor. But they have now, the felony possession for higher than that, or selling or importing. It's so the jail reform in 217 and 280 from last year, unintended consequences. And this fentanyl is definitely one of them, which just really, which is really awful. I don't know if anyone saw Barb Kirkmeyer's, they played it on the leadership call. She used to be in the House, and now she's the commissioner, and she's running for 8. Has a really disturbing election video that was released yesterday about fentanyl. And a lot of food for fodder that's turning political without a doubt, and it's a huge hammer to be used. Let's see, human trafficking bill. That's it continues to with so many other pressing items that the legislature has. The 2 bill sponsors continue to have that's their thing. We're going to continue to see the human trafficking piece. Well, again, what's really difficult is the longer you don't address something, the bigger the fiscal note is to address it. The less likely it will be addressed because of the fiscal note. So again, it's just this, it's just a complex quagmire of the bigger the hole gets, the harder it is to fill. 1304, the investment in local affordable housing. You will see that the response locally and statewide for affordable housing, the AMI continues to go up for the target populations. And that is nothing but response to it's too expensive to live in the state of Colorado. So now we're looking at 140%. Dan, this would be interesting for you, Bubba, 140% of AMI. I've never even heard of affordable housing in my 40 years career that 140% of AMI even falls into the conversation of affordable housing. So a lot of shifts are happening. Jeff and Rachel and our new housing team, Dan coming out of HHS. Again, that's why Broomfield is really approaching it as a housing for all. We're coming back to council on where we are on the housing for all continuum, getting into the semantics and the definition of attainable housing and affordable housing. People aren't even there anymore, right? Focusing on workforce housing and having a targeted population instead of that whole stream. Human Services continues to kind of focus in the 40% of AMI, which is even high, right? I mean, Broomfield's at $96,000. So 40% of that is really Human Services area, along with kind of the homelessness stuff. The rest of that pipeline, if you will, for the housing for all, even a much more diverse economically and socioeconomically, Adams County is really singling in on, we can't do it all. We have to zero in, and they also are zeroing in on the workforce housing. So it'll be continuing to be super interesting. I don't know if everybody got to read the recent, oh geez, I should, right before the end, I'll send it out to this group, but Denver hired a consultant. They came in, they have finalized the research and outcome of the investment and philosophy and structure that Denver's put in place, not just with homelessness, but with housing in general. It's fascinating. So I'll send that out. We talked about a lot, let's see. 1287, the Mobile Home Park Act. Continue to make small, very incremental. I don't even want to say progress because it really isn't. So marketing and saying, putting out kind of one pagers and branding isn't getting the impact yet. We continue to see, we're going to beef up our complaint line, but not direct impact from a service level or an oversight perspective. Let's see, energy. This is another one of those kind of the incremental steps. It gives the local governments enforcement authority. Which as a home, we already have this capability. So we can revoke. It's hard to revoke a permit that's already been in place if they don't comply with the components of the bill, which is essentially if you say you're going to do something, you better do it, because if you don't, we'll be able to go in and revoke that permit. So it's interesting too, because we try to communicate so much with the FAA for all of our airport stuff. And now down at the legislature, the FAA has about 5 lobbyists, federal and state, that are making sure that anything that we try to install on any of the wind turbine so that planes don't fly into them, they have to comply with FAA. So it sure be great if we could have the FAA attention for our airport stuff like we do on these wind turbines. Wildfire is clearly, so SB 114. And again, we already do this, but the water ponds establishes a process for commissioners to apply to the state engineering for preservations of the fire pond. So again, strategically placing access so that what happens from the Marshall fires, where they're running around trying to find the fire hydrants. At the oil and gas meeting on Tuesday night, North Metro had made mention about the number of fire hydrants and where they're located in proximity to the oil and gas pads. It's similar to that, although it's not a fire hydrant, but it's the pond suppression pads. It's a lot of money. It takes a lot of work for upkeep. And what the bill doesn't do is it doesn't provide a not absorption. You have a glass of water and evaporation, an evaporation over the ponds. So again, it gets halfway there, but not really. It kind of funds it, but not really. It kind of addresses it, but not really. Sustainability. So we talked about 1218. This is part and parcel of what we're talking about for our development codes that Anna and her crew are bringing to council. So following up on the council retreat. with having council make decisions on the front end about the must-haves and what it looks like, this bill provides us some pretty good language on what that looks like. So this one, the future commercial and multifamily residences, so not single family homes, right? But the ones that cost us a lot of money, which is the multifamily, at least 10% of the parking spaces for EV, which at the CCCMA, when we're having this conversation, the piece that Broomfield that we'll be bringing to council is A, it's a higher number, and B, what's more important than that is that the new buildings have to have the conduit. So addressing the back end of having the charging stations is not nearly as important long-term as having it wired throughout each one of these developments. The good news is we'll have costs that we can use in ours to be able to kind of be the guiding direction to be able to provide to the developers and for us to understand what it looks like from an ongoing maintenance perspective, and also where we want our public charging stations based on the possible new development and where they're going in and what they're going to have. So again, capitalizing on what someone else is doing, especially on their dollars. Greenhouse gas emissions, Senate Bill 138. Everyone continues. It's a bipartisan group, which is pretty fascinating, and it really is a bipartisan group. Another piece of I think James Marsh Holshan asked about it like 3 meetings ago, which is our fleet. You can't have a sweeping, we have, say you have 100 city vehicles, getting rid of 50 and bringing on 50, but you do have to have a plan of attrition. So when we're bringing them on, the capability of making sure that a certain percentage or number, which we already do. Carolyn, that's another, Kimberly sent the note. Will you remind me of that today when we have our water meeting this afternoon? To find that after that meeting, I had asked how many cars do we have? How many are electric? What does that phase in look like right now? So again, it's the what it does help with is it helps with procurement. So if once the state law passes, it allows kind of that regional purchasing power. To what extent, I don't know. Human services, universal pre-K. Dan participated on the BECC board discussion. It's I mean, more of the kind of the great intention, right? So taking the universal kindergarten now to preschool, trying to do it in a thoughtful and methodical way. Preschool is already exponentially expensive. Carolyn and I had a conversation yesterday about the cost of daycare. It really does completely prevent or keeps our rock star females out of the workforce because it's so expensive. So any additional unfunded mandates, it's super tough. So Dan, anything, so again, the 9 to 11% of the families who are eligible for CCAP only funds 9 to 11%. Is that right?
Yeah. CCAP will supply some of that, 9 to 11%. They also anticipate higher participation in CCAP for before or after school now. If children are participating in the preschool program, they may need care before or after that. And then the board conversation with BECC is actually Tuesday morning, Jen. I sat with Jessica Jones, and then I talked to the state Department of Early Care and Learning. The big thing right now is that community, oh, I forgot what the acronym is, but basically that coordinating organization, the LCO, the local coordinating organization, and that is designated by each community separately. Right now, it looks like Boulder Valley School District, the LCO for BBSD. We're waiting on Adams 12 to decide if they will be or if their early childhood council will be.
Good.
And then we'll have to formulate a plan after that. So not
Good.
to confuse it more, but it does get weedy, and it's a 500-page bill.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, it's when you just throw in a whole handful of spaghetti up on the fridge to see which ones stick. And that just, it's just fraught with peril in the implementation. And then you have so many opportunities for unintended consequences. It's hard to implement. So again, kind of that laser targeted approach. Bottom line is, though, it's not local government's role. It's not our role to administer it, to coordinate it. It really, once again, is going to fall to the nonprofits and the schools to make that happen. A lot of conversation on 1259, which is the modification to the Colorado Works Bill. When I was having the conversation with Jenny Pigeonneau on some of the other on the collective bargaining. It expands eligibility for specific populations. And so again, the intent is the works program to increase benefit amounts, which is good. But what it does do from the Colorado Works Program bill, TANF will be changed to like cash only. And what that does is it eliminates essential county services like the work support program. So it's not even an unintended consequence. Right? They know that by beefing up one, I don't want to say it negates the other, but sometimes programs are complex because people's needs are complex, and the more simplification, pumping up the volume on one, it makes it tough. So it'll be interesting to see where that one goes. But if CCI is opposing a county administered bill, the likelihood of passage is pretty small. Let's see. Yeah, the next one, we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about it. It's interesting. It's the kind of like methadone is to heroin. They are likening this this treatment, if you will, and a lot of people don't consider it a treatment. It's a herbal extract from Asia and is medically proven to lower the transition off of opioids. Is just the simplest way I can put it without going through that whole paragraph. So we'll see where that goes. Lodging tax revenue bill, another interesting one, given some of the conversations that we're having about the lodging tax. It empowers local voters to identify how their county lodging tax revenues should be invested. So just kind of sit in that for a minute. CCI has been working hard on it. Again, it's anything home rule municipalities, which is who we are, have no limits on the amount or use of their lodging tax. So some of the amendments on 117 lists housing and childcare. So it expands where you can spend those dollars, although we can already do that. It allows those that can't already do it to have a laser focus on it. Essential services for a special youth district. Yeah, let's see. Trying to be mindful of the time here. I know we went way over last week. So 1097, That's it's the county authority for dissolution of Metro tax, which is pretty interesting. So we can file an application to dissolve a special district to include boards of county commissioners, also allows counties and special districts with no outstanding financial obligations or debt to say, let's go ahead and close this down. We don't owe any more money. We don't foresee needing any more money for the infrastructure. So we're going to go ahead and disband that special district. It opens that up as well. We already have that authority. So again, it's so much of being a home rule, being a city and being a county and having a constitutional amendment afforded us a lot of these capabilities, authorities, and powers that that other folks don't have. Thus, you see a lot of these bills coming through to fix that. Modification to sales tax statutes. We don't really need to. We don't need to go. It's a cleanup bill. Let's see what else. Internal election security measures gaining a lot of attention. It brings out all the conspiracy theorists, which it's running amok down there right now. So it has to do with election security. I'm sure we're all very familiar with what's happening up in Mesa County right now. It's just I don't even know if fascinating is the right word, but it's certainly what we are going to see more and more and more of, from local elections to state elections. So it's expanding the authority of the Secretary of State in overseeing elections, establishing the security requirements for voting equipment, requiring county clerks and certain staff receive training. So again, they're talking about video storage and cameras, key card access, stuff that we've done years ago. So we have 24/7 cameras, we record it, it's safe, it's secure, it's locked, kind of jumping through all those hoops. So again, it's the interesting piece is the training, so that throughout the state, no more, I didn't know that I couldn't do it, or this doesn't specifically say what retaining records means, right? So I can have my own interpretation of what retaining records means. So this really does, it solidifies what those definitions are, and it mandates that you do a whole host of other kind of security measures. Let's see. Devin had sent from CCAT a bunch of bills that he wanted supported. In the past, we've always said, if they're Broomfield specific. This year we didn't do this. We'll continue to revise our, kind of the legislative approach. Supporting a bill is more about being able to, tell CCAT that we're in support of what their legislative package is. Nothing that's outside of alignment with what Broomfield has done. So the process that we put in place for 2022 was really the legislative principles and policy statements, and then working with our other lobbying groups, make sure that they were in alignment, send to council, not recommendations, but where those other groups are, that we would be in alignment, so that we don't have a lot of back and forth and we can move swiftly. So we are supporting those bills that are listed. We talked about them in the prior, and we go through and we say, it doesn't impact Broomfield, primarily because we either have an ordinance in place, or because we're home rule, or because, the city likes the county and vice versa. we're not scrapping over authority, power, or finances. So you can look, I think this is the largest list that we have ever had that is actually marked support. And then you can see the additional also requested that our individual lobby groups advocate for amendments. So those are all listed there. And again, these are all CCAP bills. So coming out of the lobbying group. And that kind of wraps it up. So in questions? Sarah Grant, anything from hot and heavy coming out of transportation? Keep reading about how CDOT has scope creep, and folks are thinking, how about if you just focus on, I don't know, pavement or making sure the bridges are safe? Is that like a total setup for you, Sarah?
No, that's okay.
Okay.
I don't have any updates on that, but I do know there's quite a bit of discussion going on right now.
Okay, good. Jay, anything else coming out of any additional word on estimating the property taxes and what the increase is going to look like? I'm sure we'll have a much better sense, obviously, in 6 months. But
yeah, and we're seeing, just based on sales alone, we're going to see probably 6-digit increases on notice of values this year. So, or for 2023, I should say. So, the only thing else sitting out there is, I think, Initiative 74 and 75 that looks like they want to cap it to like a 3% or based on inflation numbers for increase as far as value goes. So that's obviously something we're looking at or keeping an eye on. The CA, Colorado Assessors Association, is keeping an eye on that. We're also looking at, it looks like 1296, the residential property classification for nursing homes is in place, but the rehab center has been taken out of the bill. So
interesting.
yeah, they took out the rehab center portion of that bill. So we'll see what it looks like when it comes down and what we're going to do with it. Because most of the stuff we have on currently, as far as rehabilitation centers, we have as a residential rate going currently. So we'll go ahead and take a look at that. Outside of that, the mobile home is another thing that seems to be in place, and assessors, especially the smaller communities, are not liking the threshold of 20. So it's a $28,000 actual value is what they're trying to exempt for property taxes for mobile homes. And for the smaller counties, it's too much of a hit for them. Even at that small level, they're saying it's just too much. So we'll see, how our lobbyists do with that too. So it's something in place for us as well. Other than that, that's all I have.
I always thought, Jay, that, because that's been talked about, just, geez, it has to be 10 years. But I always thought that they should use the same methodology for the tiers, right? And so when they were talking about the commissioner's pay, how we tiered out all of the, but we have the various tiers of the counties.
Correct.
I always thought that it should be that the tax rate rebate should have some type of equivalency built in, right? So that it's not a line by line matrix.
Correct. That makes sense though from that perspective.
Well,
but I don't think.
But apparently nobody else did, because whenever I'd say that, everybody go, "Yeah, okay, yeah, that, okay, right." I'm kind of just sharing that with you.
No, and it's good. I mean, that's something that maybe it's something I can take back, at the next legislative meeting I have with them, to say, have we thought about possibly saying, instead of across as a whole, why don't we base it on the tiers like we do salaries for different levels, depending upon how big your counties are. So yeah, that's definitely something I'll bring up to them. We'll see.
Let's see, Nancy, Pat, anything from the legal person? You want to do a quick update on the O's and P's, the opioids. Good night, Irene.
Pat, if you want to talk about that real quick, and then Christina's on the call too, and she's been monitoring all the public safety bills. If there's
Oh,
any
that'd be great.
information on those.
Sure. On the opioid settlement, we have been working closely with the state AG's office, and that settlement was finalized. So we are moving forward. Public Health has done a great job of putting this structure together to have our regional council. So we are on track for that. In a separate but related matter, on the bankruptcy, we needed to go ahead and vote for a proxy in this weird kind of court in Ireland because that's where the company was created. So we've got that moving forward. That's the Mallinckrodt bankruptcy. So we are moving forward with our outside counsel and are up to date on the related bankruptcy proceedings. So we are on track, and I believe the state council, the abatement council, is also been structured and is moving forward. So it's looking very promising to get funds to Broomfield through that settlement.
Thanks, Pat. And Christina, I don't know if there was anything you wanted to add on the public safety bills.
So me, along with the police department, we are tracking them closely. We have meetings every week. This year is a little different than the last 2 years, which is potentially a good thing for law enforcement. There are still bills that potentially affect law enforcement, and we will be continuing to monitor those.
Great, thank you.
Jennifer had to step away for a minute. So she'll be right back.
I just wanted to jump in. I want to clarify a couple of things with the CCAP and the Universal Pre-K and Department of Early Childhood bill. That's the House Bill 22-1295. So there's a lot of things in that bill. Like I said earlier, it's 485 page bill. The CCAP program is moving with the new department as they move this away from the Colorado Department of Human Services and into a new Department of Early Care and Learning, I believe is what it's called. CCAP is moving into that new department. So traditionally, we've had the Board of Social Services, the Board of Human Services that helps promulgate rules, and CCAP rules were promulgated by the board. The new bill says that the executive director of the new department can promulgate the bills. And I think that's what county directors are a little bit worried about. It takes away some of that local control. We have had the ability to modify our program as we needed to based on our allocation. I think we've talked about that in a few of our other council meetings, but I think that for Broomfield, it's, again, we're smaller, so the impact to us isn't as large, but we've been keeping a pretty close eye on how CCAP is going to be managed. And again, talking to staff from the state, I think that is one that will get cleaned up later, and that it will go back to some board once this new department is formulated and they have a governing body as opposed to just an executive director. With the Universal Pre-K, there's about $180 million that was funded initially to the Department of Education that will be moving to this new Department of Early Care and Learning, and that will help fund the Universal Pre-K. And then CCAP, the 9 to 11% is a state assessment on how many children are eligible for CCAP that are actually participating in CCAP. There's a portion of CCAP funding that can help offset the UPK or the Universal Pre-K as well. We don't need to get too weedy on that, but we've been keeping a close eye. We've been, historically, we were underfunded in CCAP, and we would always buy allocation to offset that. And when they did their new allocation model, we've been overfunded, and we've actually been able to sell our underspent allocation to other counties that are overspent. So it's always a balancing act, and it's always something that we work diligently with our other county partners on. So I just wanted to throw that out there to clarify for that House Bill 1295.
And we're still waiting on Jennifer. So if anyone else has updates.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions on any of the bills or anything that's on the dossier, we can talk about those.
I can keep rambling about our bills if you'd like.
Okay, Dan, I'll give you a question to let you ramble. At the
Okay.
CCAT meeting yesterday, there was conversation about a lot of the representatives wanted an advisory board set up, and the governor was opposed to it, was what the conversation was about. And that, instead of that, they wanted an actual advisory board and not just somebody pushing down the rules.
Yeah, you're talking about for the new department?
Yep.
Yeah, I haven't been as up to speed on what they're doing with advisory. I know that my fellow counterparts at the state are assuming that within the next year or two that they would have some type of an advisory board. I did not hear that the governor was not in favor of that. What they said is our Board of Human Services that promulgates all of the other rules isn't going to be promulgating rules for the new department, but they had anticipated establishing something downstream. But Councilmember Lim, I can look into that a little bit further and circle back with you and let you know what I hear. As of right now, I haven't heard anything that they're not going to do it. What I heard is that they are anticipating. But your news is new to me, so that would be something I had not heard previously.
And our fearless leader is back.
Any other, Jean, so I'm sure so Dan, will you talk just a little bit about the workforce and veterans and that they're coming on the, bringing the whole team, and that's super exciting. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, we're doing the military appreciation and bringing the veterans. I believe, Jen, that's the proclamation that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, next month we'll be bringing the proclamation for veterans appreciation and then talking about our veterans programs and some of our success stories we've had with getting them employed. But yeah, that's going to be a neat event.
Yeah.
Oh, good. That's great, though. That's next month, you said.
That's next month, yeah. And all of that, and you'll probably start hearing more on the, not just on the rural workforce board, Jean, but really the impetus on a lot of those veteran services. And we don't bump up the volume enough here with Tim Hutchinson. He's, well, you know him, Jean. I mean, he just does, he's so well respected throughout the state. In so many disciplines, I get comments about Tim just consistently, and all of Demetrius's work at the state level for the vets. We have really great tangible examples here of kind of what that could look like. So I'm excited from a workforce perspective too. Plus, it was so good seeing everybody, Dan, yesterday.
Yeah. And everybody here misses seeing your face around here. I was just pulling up the proclamation and wanted to echo what Jennifer said about Tim. We affectionately refer to him as Amazing Tim.
Mm-hmm.
He's just amazing, and he's never stops, right? Just constantly wants to help people. In fact, I'll tell a funny story about a neighbor that's a veteran that was having trouble, lives in Adams County, and I connected him with Tim, and Tim was actually able to help him as well. So Tim's just awesome with the veterans, and he's awesome, just an awesome guy.
Yeah, he really is. All right, so what else? Lori, did you have questions?
No.
Okay. Jean, anything else from you?
Nope. These meetings are in sync with the CC4CA legislative meeting that follows immediately at noon. So
That's exactly, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
legislative day.
Thanks, everybody. Sure appreciate it. Everybody that isn't in the office, have a wonderful day.
Thanks.
Carolyn, just real quick before you jump off. Do we have any questions on the voice for